One day, two non-athletes woke up and said, "Hey, let's do a sports podcast." These courageous warriors faced great obstacles such as mediocre microphones, Skip Bayless, and Matt Hendrickson. This is The Unathletic. Welcome to this edition of The Unathletic, everyone. I'm your host, Ben Friedel, and alongside me, as always, Nate Wiggins. What is going on, my man?
I'm doing very well. I had a good weekend, and, I'm very happy right now. Although, as happy as I am, you are not going to be here for the rest of the week, so that is kind of sad.
Yeah, I'm not going to be here.
But I'll find a way to survive, Ben. I will find a way.
Well, I mean, me not being here does not inhibit us doing this show.
I was talking more just about our friendship.
Oh, yeah.
But I guess to you, our friendship is built on the show. Okay.
Yep, pretty much. So anyways, diving into the show right now. Every week we basically just want to come to you guys and just talk about the sports and stories that we want to talk about. So, newsflash, you're going to get a lot of soccer today. That's just something that is... I think we've defined it in past shows as the gift that keeps on giving.
Beautiful game.
The beautiful game. And boy, did soccer really give us a lot of great content to talk about for this episode. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But other than soccer, we're going to be talking some NBA playoffs this episode. And on a more general note, we just make it a point to try to break the mold and try to just talk about the sports that may not get enough attention. If you're watching, not to throw specific people under the bus, but Skip Bayless, you already heard of the intro, but we're not a fan of Skip. He is the one word to describe Skip Bayless, Nate.
Insane.
Yeah, pretty much. So that guy, he needs to open a book, as you would say, Nate, definitely.
Yes.
But anything I missed? We just going to jump right in?
Let's go on.
All right, right on. So the world of soccer, European soccer specifically, I think has been super wild over the past week and a half. We had the conclusion of the quarterfinals for the Champions League, and we actually want to start our discussion on a game that we didn't even bring up, or we barely brought up last episode, Barcelona versus Roma. And in case you're living under a rock, Roma came back and beat Barcelona 3-0 in this leg. Basically dethroning Barcelona and escaping because they were really down in the first leg.
They were down 4-1 in the first leg.
I mean, Nate, we completely overlooked this on our last episode. I mean, how could we have overlooked a Roma side who clearly had the quality to just come back and take it to Barcelona?
Yeah, but can you really blame us or anyone for looking over Roma? I mean, they lost the first leg 4-1, and last time I checked, Barcelona has this player named Lionel Messi, who's pretty damn good.
That guy.
And but just looking at the match overall, I think that Barcelona showed a problem something that Argentina has faced in the past, and that is when Messi does not play well, the other players on the team do not step up. And, that's been one of the concerns with Argentina. If you look at Argentina over World Cup qualifying, it took a hat trick from Messi in the final day of qualifying for them to even get to the World Cup. And, you look at Barcelona now, I think that Messi is... for as great as he is, you cannot expect him to be absolutely amazing every single week in, week out, every single match. Eventually, he's going to have days where he's just not as good as he normally is. But you expect the Luis Suarez's and those type of players, the Andre Iniestas, to pick it up. And those guys clearly did not. They just did not have it in that second leg against Roma. But, we were talking about Barcelona. Let's give all credit. We got to give all credit to Roma. Because tactically, they were the better team over two legs, and
they got that crucial away goal at the new camp from Edin Dzeko, just to show that even when you're down 4-0, you get that away goal because that'll give you actually a chance going back into the second leg at home.
Yeah, and two of those goals that they gave up in that first leg were own goals. So it really, that 4-1 scoreline was not an accurate way of showing how Roma played in that first leg, and so they really came in that second leg and said, you know what, we have absolutely nothing to lose. Let's just go out. Let's take it to Barcelona. Let's see what happens. And while I was watching this match, I actually did not see the first two goals, but once that Roma had cut it, once they were up 2-0, I turned it on, and I was like, just the passion that these Roma players were playing with. And when they scored that third goal, the celebration, the players on the field, the fans in the crowd, it was just incredible. I mean, this isn't a huge upset. This is a huge upset, for Barcelona, the big boys, the big Spanish boys, got the best player in the world, got all this money, and they coming against a Roma side that is a good side. Roma is a good team, but I don't think anyone expected them to get this far. So all credit in the world to Roma because they were the better team over 2 legs. Over 180 minutes, they outplayed Barcelona.
You mentioned Messi, and you just dubbed him in your last statement best player in the world. Now, I think the question becomes, though, Barcelona has not made it past the quarterfinals in the Champions League in the past 3 years. So 3 straight years they haven't, been where they need to be in the Champions League and where you would expect a team like Barcelona to be. So I think the question is, over the last few years, does that reflect negatively upon Messi's legacy, and potentially has Ronaldo passed Messi as the GOAT, if you will?
I still think Messi's the best player in the world, and I think that, from a talent, just objectively, I think you could clearly make the argument that he is the best player of all time. However, you look at the quarterfinal losses in the Champions League, and you put into the fact that with Argentina...
He's retired twice.
He's retired twice. Between 2014 and 2016, he lost 3 straight Cup finals with Argentina, the World Cup in 2014, and then lost back-to-back Copa America finals. And so, I think that this does reflect negatively on Messi's legacy, particularly the fact that in those losses, he did not play well. And, you can talk about Higuain and that miss in the World Cup final in 2014, but, in those games, Messi has not played well. I remember in 2016, Copa America against Chile, when they went to penalties, and then he skyrocketed that penalty to the freaking moon. I think that you can look at Messi's legacy and say, you know what? He has the talent he's got, and I think that he is one of the best to ever play the game, if not the greatest. But there have been times in some of these big games where Messi has not stepped up, whereas Ronaldo, we'll get to him in a little bit, Ronaldo has stepped up. So I'm not here to say that Ronaldo is better than Messi, but I do think that some of these losses do reflect negatively on Messi's legacy.
Got it, yeah. So I think, in my opinion, I don't know. I think objectively, talent-wise, I think you were right to say that Messi, with just God-given talent, is the greatest we arguably have ever seen. Because I think if you look in contrast, Ronaldo just is getting every cent out of his body, essentially, and is just a physical force and in the best shape, arguably, of any soccer player in the world. And we were comparing him to LeBron James, being 33 years old. I believe LeBron is 33.
LeBron's also 33.
Yeah, so they're the same age, and I think at the same level of dominance.
I think so, yeah.
In their respective sports, and culturally also just icons of the game and whatnot. But I think Ronaldo has probably had to work harder to be as good as he is. Whereas Messi, he's a smaller guy, but I think that's just a God-given gift that he's just so incredible at football. But I do agree with you that 3 straight Champions League quarterfinal losses. Barcelona, they brought in Philippe Coutinho, they brought in Ousmane Dembele, and I think the question becomes, where do they add from here? And if you look at their roster objectively,
their roster is set to win the Champions League.
It doesn't look like they have a lot of holes. So it's how do they make this next step? Is it a managerial thing? Is it player personnel? What do you think, Nate?
I don't know. I mean, because we can look at Barcelona and say that they got eliminated in the Champions League, but let's not overlook the fact that they are unbeaten in La Liga.
Yeah.
And I know it doesn't look, for a Barcelona fan, they may feel like this hurt right now, and even Luis Suarez said it on Saturday after their match. He said that, I'm trying to remember the quote. He said, the fans, they're upset with us. It was a weird environment at the Camp Nou, and that people were still hurting from the Champions League loss, and that winning La Liga means nothing. That's what Luis Suarez said on Saturday. And I think that that's a bit of an overreaction, how people are very in the moment. You and I have talked about the knee-jerk reactions in sports and overreactions, and I think that at the end of the season, Barcelona fans are going to look at this and say, hey, if they do go unbeaten in La Liga, hey, we went unbeaten. They just set the record now for the longest unbeaten streak in La Liga, going 38 straight games now. So I think when we look at Barcelona, they do have the pieces to win the Champions League, and I'm not even sure that they really even need to add. I mean, People talk about maybe a Griezmann coming in, but where does Griezmann fit in?
Mm-hmm.
You got Coutinho, you've got Dembele. I know Iniesta's on his way out, so you can stick in a Coutinho or a Dembele. Where do these guys? Where does a Griezmann, if he comes in, where does that guy fit in? I think that with Barcelona, it's the problem is that they have too many players. But that's not really a problem. It's just like that's a problem that I would love, Dortmund to have or someone. So with Barcelona, it's not even. I don't even know if it's like player personnel. I think it's just they just for some reason cannot get over this hump. And I thought this was going to be the year because last year they lost to Juventus. This year I thought, okay, Roma, they're going to get the job done, and they still were not able to get it done.
Yeah, and but all credit to Roma.
Yeah.
As we said, that was...
we're talking about Barcelona, but Roma, I mean, that's a Cinderella story.
I believe it was Manolas who scored that header at the end of the game, and his reaction was just unbelievable, just running over to his coach and just like screaming into the crowd. It just showed how much that means to a club like Roma, and for me, it's refreshing to see teams like Roma and see teams like Liverpool, who we're going to get to in a second, getting into the semis of the Champions League, because I feel like oftentimes in soccer, it can be kind of the same script. We got Real, we got Bayern, we got Barcelona, and then probably one other team, and then that's kind of all we got. But this year, definitely the Champions League has been, upset city in a ways, and albeit Real Madrid and Bayern are still in the race, it's been really exciting thus far. And I mentioned Liverpool, so Roma actually are going to draw Liverpool in the semifinals. So either Roma or Liverpool are going to make the Champions League final, which I think is really special. And I was actually listening to Arsenal Fan TV, and they were talking about this, and then for them, that really just harkens back to like the 1980s. Like teams like Liverpool and Roma were like the Barcelonas and the Real Madrids in the soccer world. So we're almost seeing a revival in soccer culture in that way. But so we have Roma, Liverpool in the semis, and Liverpool dispatched Manchester City, the seemingly invincible, quote unquote, Manchester City by a score of 5-2 over 2 legs. So they pretty much clearly won that tie. They were clearly the better side. And Nate, I mean, you called this. You thought Liverpool was going to go through, but the second leg, it looked like kind of like a similar story to the first leg in terms of Liverpool dominance.
You know what? If you look at the scoreline, you would say that, but I don't think that was the case. I mean, if you look in the second leg, Manchester City scored just 2 minutes into the match, Gabriel Jesus. And while I was watching this, I was watching it on my phone, and it looked to me like the Etihad was going absolutely insane. And then they had Manchester City had another goal disallowed, probably wrongly, right before the end of the first half. And so this really had Liverpool fans sweating up until the 56th minute, when that man, Mo Salah, scored, and then in the 77th minute, Bobby Firmino scored to put this tie away for Liverpool and send them to the Champions League.
How about Mo Salah, though?
Oh, my gosh. How about my man of the week, Mo Salah? I mean, this guy is he is on a whole nother level. It is just insane what he's doing. Last Saturday against Bournemouth, he actually scored his 30th Premier League goal and his 40th goal in all competitions. That is absolutely insane. 40th goal in all competitions. I believe he's the first African to score 30 Premier League goals. And this is a guy who was with Chelsea back in 2016. And Jose Mourinho said, "Come back to me when you're a real footballer." I would say that he's a real footballer now.
Yeah.
So let that be a lesson, kids. Never give up on your dream.
Definitely. And now Mo Salah will face his former team in the Champions League semis. And I think on a semi-related note, I saw Roma's social media kind of posting about the fact that they were going to face Mo Salah. And Roma, their team had all good things to say about Mo Salah. And I think it was really important that their team kind of on their social media accounts are treating Mo Salah in this way of like, hey man, we respect everything you do and you still mean a lot to this club and what you gave to us last season. And so given how violent and very racist Italian fans in the domestic league can be, I think it's good that the Roma social media account actually came out and said these nice things about Mo Salah. So hopefully we see a hero's greeting for him. But I think once game time gets going, we're going to hear some boos definitely when he gets the ball. But yeah, I mean, Nate, this is a big semifinal matchup. I think two sides that I don't think anyone at the beginning of the season thought would make it to this point.
I didn't think Roma was going to make it out of their group, to be honest, with Atletico and Chelsea.
Yeah, and now here they are in the semifinals. So Nate, who do you have going through and winning this tie, advancing to the Champions League final, which will take place in Kiev, Ukraine? What a city!
Have you ever been to Kiev? Or are you
I have
just
not
saying
been
that?
to
Oh, okay.
Kiev, but
All right.
you know, I don't think I ever will. But yeah, that's where they're playing.
I'm gonna go with Liverpool. I think that we have talked numerous times on here about the Liverpool attack of Sadio Mane, Bobby Firmino, and Mo Salah combined for 82 goals this year between the three of them. That is insane, and I think that attack, as good as Roma is, and particularly as good as they were defensively in that second leg against Barcelona, I think that attack of that trio is just too much for Roma. So
Yeah.
I got Liverpool going through.
Okay, I think I also have Liverpool. In my world, I think Roma would be playing either Bayern or Real Madrid. I would have liked to see both of those teams on either side of the draw so that we could potentially have one or two upsets, and then I would have loved to see this as the final, honestly. I think because I think for me as a fan and across any sport, I like it when teams who aren't expected to make it to the final are there. And it would have just been so exciting to see them both in the final. However, that is not the case, and I realize I'm speaking very hypothetically. So I think I'll have to go with Liverpool. I think that attack is just going to be too much for... And I think that's the exact same thing that we were kind of saying about Manchester City in respect to Liverpool. Liverpool's attack, arguably right now, best in the world. I would maybe even say unequivocally best in the world.
I would say unequivocally,
This attack, and especially their form... that Firmino, Sane, and Salah, they've all had in the Champions League all year. I think each one of them has at least 7 goals in the Champions League alone thus far. And so when you have 3 guys coming in, and even over the weekend, each of them scored a goal apiece. And so, they're sharing the level a little bit, trying to keep confidence up. And, I think Jurgen Klopp has his team at an all-time high in terms of confidence. And I think, but I don't know. I don't think this is going to be... I think it'll be closer than Liverpool-Manchester City. I think just given Roma are just riding this high in the Champions League, and they're going to be coming in with all the confidence in the world, saying, "Hey, we just beat Barcelona." I mean, beating Liverpool should not be nearly as difficult as beating a team like Barcelona. So yeah, I do have Liverpool in this game. And I think, speaking of Roma, though, in that crazy comeback, that wasn't the only crazy comeback to occur in the Champions League, or at least almost to occur in the Champions League. So Real Madrid, in fact, on the other side of the draw, they almost blew their chances of advancing to the Champions League semifinals. They won on a final aggregate score of 4-3. And if you were living under a rock, there's also this guy named Cristiano Ronaldo who, Nate, last I heard, he's pretty good.
Yeah,
he's a pretty good player. And I think before we get into what Cristiano did in order to just secure his team spot in the Champions League semifinals, Juventus, the team that Real Madrid were facing, they were down 3-0. Or...
They lost the first leg 3-0.
Lost the first leg 3-0. That's right, and then
at home too.
Yeah, so that's 3 away goals to overcome for a team like Juventus, and so going into the second leg, they faced a huge uphill battle in Madrid of all places. So we last week we
said they were done.
They were
I
done.
Gave them no chance.
They were buried. We even predicted that Real maybe could win this game 2-3-0, and then it would be like a 6-0 aggregate, and then that would have just been a really kind of sad way for Juve to go out, but they really put up a fight. They defied all of our expectations, and they came all the way back to tie this tie by scoring 3 unanswered goals, and then so then it was a 3-3 aggregate score. Each team had 3 away goals, so if the score held there, it would have gone into extra time. And until Benatia, who's I believe a right back for Juventus, kicked Lucas Vazquez arguably in the face from behind, winning a penalty for Real Madrid in extra time. And Gigi Buffon was furious at this call, went up, started arguing with the ref. The ref showed him a straight red card and then sent off Gigi Buffon for I think is going to be his very last Champions League game ever. And yeah, so up stepped Ronaldo, and he buried the penalty, kind of as close to a walk-off as you'll see in soccer, because it took like 5 or 6 minutes to kind of clear everyone out and have them stop arguing with the referee, And
so like by the time it was the penalty occurred with like the 92nd minute in stoppage time, but he didn't end up taking the penalty until like the 98th minute.
Yeah. And so at that point, you can't let the game run much longer than that. So he essentially took the penalty, and then it was game over. Ronaldo buried it, and then Real Madrid were moving forward. And I think the key part of all of that chaotic story is the penalty and whether or not it actually was a penalty. So Nate, in your estimation, was it a penalty?
Yeah, I think it was a penalty. Look, when you come over someone's back in the box and also your cleat ends up near their face, in my mind, that is a penalty. And people can argue about it and whatnot, but I think that is a clear penalty. What about you, Ben?
I mean, I can see how it would be a penalty and how it would be called. I've seen worse ignored, though, I think is my point. I've seen so many calls that were clearly penalties not called for the sake of the quote-unquote flow of the game and for referees not to inhibit play in that way. And I mean, also, if Real Madrid were on the other end of this, do you think that the call would have been made? Honestly, because it seems like Real Madrid at all times always gets, they always get the call going in their favor.
I think that people are going to make that argument, but I'll flip that argument on its head and say people in Serie A will make the argument that Juventus always gets calls and always gets questionable calls that go in their favor. And so I think that, it happened in the Bernabeu. People can ask, well, would this have happened if this wasn't Real Madrid in the Bernabeu? I think that is a clear-cut penalty, and so that's why I think that anywhere in the world, whether it's the Champions League, whether that's MLS, whether that's some beer league, I think that penalty is getting called.
Beer league. I think that's a fair point, and I think on another note, to address the penalty once more, is just that I think as an entertainment factor for the fans, and maybe this is just me projecting all over this, I didn't want that penalty to happen because of the comeback.
I didn't want that game to end in a penalty. And so, yeah, I totally get that. I was really excited to see extra time, and so for it to end like that is kind of anticlimactic, but it's, I would rather see a referee call that than ignore it.
Mm-hmm. And I think beyond just the penalty, showing Gigi Buffon a straight red right there to finish off his Champions League career, you can't do that to the greatest goalie to ever live. And yeah,
but also you can't. If you're Gigi Buffon, you cannot make contact with the referee, and that is for anyone who has ever played a sport. One of the absolute no things that you cannot do is you cannot make contact with an official. It doesn't matter what sport it is. If you touch the official in the NFL, if you touch an official, I believe that's an automatic ejection. I've never seen it in basketball, but I'm sure if a basketball player touches an official in a malicious intent, I'm sure that you'll get a flagrant foul. I think that you talk about Gigi Buffon and was that a penalty? Was that not a penalty? And his reaction, you cannot put your hands on an official, and that was Gigi Buffon's mistake. And he's not the first legend to have his career end like that. I remember Zinedine Zidane and the headbutt in the 2006 World Cup, or Steven Gerrard in the way that his career ended at Liverpool. But the reality is that if you're Gigi Buffon, you have got to be smarter than that. You cannot touch the official in any situation, but particularly in that situation when your team needs you to be in the net to save a penalty.
What about those comments that Gigi made after the match?
Yeah, those were he was not a fan of what the of that penalty, saying that if the pressure's too much for you as an official, then you need to be sitting in the crowd eating a packet of crisps. That is just
very European.
Very European, yes.
Yeah, and I think he also called him a dog and some other insults in a directly translated to English seemed very dramatic, but I'm sure in Italian that's the day-to-day. But, I mean, I think regardless of all the crazy events that happened, just what a game. What a Champions League week.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, then with all this excitement, we had the other draw that, it seems like not many people were really even paying attention to. Bayern Munich versus Sporting. Correct?
Sevilla,
yeah. Sporting is Europa League. We'll get to that in a little bit. So Bayern Munich taking on Sevilla, and Sevilla is the team that had taken out Manchester United in the previous round. And I mean, the aggregate score was a 2-1. 2-1 aggregate score, pretty low scoring draw. So Nate, since it was, I would say, a relatively uneventful draw, give me kind of one quintessential phrase to sum up this entire draw.
those two teams played each other.
Yeah.
honestly, I totally forgot about that match. It was just from the highlights that I watched. It was very boring. It was particularly that second leg. I would have rather have watched paint dried than watch the highlights.
Than watch Bayern against Sevilla.
Yeah.
But I mean, regardless, Bayern went through. They got the result, even if it wasn't pretty. They move on to the next round to face
two big boys.
Face Real Madrid. And I know what a tough draw for Real Madrid, kind of coming out of the group stage, like having to play Juve and then Bayern
and PSG before that,
then PSG before that, and then going into a final potentially, playing either Liverpool or Roma, who is in the context of how this tournament has gone, not an easy match at all. So all credit to Real Madrid, but I mean, I think Bayern also has something to prove. So Nate, I think that begs the question. These are two big boys, like two teams that just refuse to lose. At least on the international level. So who has the edge?
I'm gonna go with Real Madrid. Sorry, I almost said Bayern for a second. I'm gonna go with Real Madrid. And the reason for that is Bayern has had a very easy road to the final. They got Besiktas. They dominated that. They got Sevilla. But now they're going to have to play a big boy compared to, like we just said with Real Madrid, they had to play PSG, Juventus, and now they got to play Bayern Munich. And so I think that adversity is only going to help Real Madrid more compared to a Bayern side that's kind of had it pretty easy so far.
Yeah, and Bayern over the weekend, I believe, clinched the Bundesliga title.
Last weekend.
Last weekend,
yeah.
And so they kind of cruised through Bundesliga.
I saw a photo of their bench this week, and it had Lewandowski, Ribery, James Rodriguez, had all their stars on the bench last week.
Yeah.
So they're just kind of chilling. And if you look at the way that they've rotated their squad, their main squad has not had a lot of time playing together. So that could be an advantage for Real Madrid, who they've basically been playing together. They had the same squad for pretty much the entire season. So there's not that same rotation.
Yeah, and I think given the adversity, as you said, in playing PSG, Juventus, and now Bayern Munich, I think the adversity that they've gone through to get to this point, and also the losses that they've taken in their domestic league, I think were great learning opportunities for this team to just really place their value into the Champions League and not take those matches for granted. Like maybe a Juventus in the first leg of that draw took the Champions League for granted. Manchester United for sure took Champions League for granted this season. So I think that Real definitely knows the importance of doing well in these critical draws right now, and I think Ronaldo is just going to be too much at the end of the day. He's just an unstoppable force, and I think this season, arguably him and Mo Salah have been the best two so far this season, and not to take anything away from the likes of Messi, Harry Kane, so on and so forth, but those two have just been on another level. So imagine, so I have Real in this match, and so we've picked Liverpool and Real. So imagine a Liverpool Real Madrid Champions League final.
That'd be a fun Champions League final.
Wow,
Absolutely.
what the goal scoring prowess on both sides. That could be like a 5-4, no, maybe not 5-4, but a really high scoring final draw. I don't think we want to get too ahead of ourselves. I think we'll cross those prediction bridges when teams have officially gone through. But I mean, I think for this Real Madrid and Bayern draw, I think one final point that's really important to note, maybe just to give a little conceit towards Bayern, I think guys like James Rodriguez have a lot to prove in this game, and this is the most important game of their season. And James Rodriguez has played fantastic this year, and he's really just he didn't go into this year with a confirmed spot in the Bayern starting lineup, and he has won that job and has completely dominated. So in this first leg, at least, I give Bayern at least a semi shot. I think Real Madrid will win, but I think it'll be a score 2-1. Ronaldo with 2 goals for Real Madrid, and then James Rodriguez with the 1 goal for Bayern Munich. And do you know where this draw is taking place?
First leg is in Madrid.
First leg is in Madrid, so it's going to be really important for Bayern Munich to get that away goal, going back home to Bayern, and then kind of closing it out in that way. Woo! Man, there we go. Champions League. It's exciting stuff. And when we come back, actually, we are not done. We are not done talking about soccer. We need to take a little break because that was 30 minutes of just talking about soccer. And guess what? We're going to come back and talk about it more. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Like what you're hearing? Well, I've got news for you. You no longer have to wait for a whole week to hear from your favorite sports personalities. Hi, I'm Matt Hendrickson, and Nigel Ward and I have got you covered. Give our show, Rev Up Those Fryers, a listen. We release new episodes every Friday and are committed to bringing you the best content. That's right, the best content.
Welcome back to the Unathletic, everyone. When we were last with you, we were talking about soccer, and guess what? We're talking about more soccer. I think we're almost at the point where we just need to make this a soccer podcast.
Pretty much, yeah.
We devote a hefty amount of time to soccer each episode. However, we do like other sports, which, contrary to popular belief, we do like other sports, and we're actually going to get to basketball in a few minutes here. But beyond just that, I think even though we just got done talking about the Champions League, and the Champions League was so entertaining, as an Arsenal fan, I have had to resort to watching Europa League, and at the beginning of the year, I was not too excited about it. I'm like, wow, we're going to have to, go play Red Star Belgrade, and I don't know how I feel about that. And this quarterfinals of the Europa League was arguably just as entertaining as what happened in the Champions League, honestly. Like, with the amount of crazy comeback wins that happened on the European International Soccer scale over this entire past week, it was an amazing week to be a soccer fan, and I think it would be amiss if we didn't address kind of what went on in the Europa League and acknowledge these teams that had these crazy comebacks in this way. So I think for the sake of myself, we'll start with Arsenal, who took on CSKA Moscow in this quarterfinal draw. Arsenal drew 2-2 against CSKA in this second leg, but they ended up advancing on a 6-3 aggregate score. So they were able to get it done. There was some nerves definitely in that second leg, especially when CSKA Moscow went up 2-0 at around the 50th minute. Myself as an Arsenal fan and other Arsenal fans are really getting nervous, I think, and thinking, oh man, are we going to just blow another one? But that was not the case. That was very encouraging. Goals from Aaron Ramsey and Danny Welbeck, the two guys that have consistently performed in this competition all year. These guys stepped up and really, put the win away for Arsenal. But, as an Arsenal fan, if I'm being completely honest, like, even though this win is great, there's definitely still question marks. That is for sure.
Yeah, I mean, look, for those of you who don't know, the winner of the Europa League gets an automatic bid to the Champions League, and since there is no chance in hell Arsenal is going to finish top 4, this is their one way to get back into the Champions League. And you know what? Like, given the fact that Arsenal cannot defend to save their lives, like, they make some of the stupidest defensive mistakes. I mean, look, man, you make fun of MLS for the defending. I don't understand how you could make fun of MLS for its defending and also defend Arsenal's defending.
I don't defend Arsenal's defending.
I'm just saying. I'm like, some of the defending that Arsenal does would not make it in MLS. I'm just gonna put that out there.
Yeah.
Like, that is like USL defending right there. But given the
fact what's your question?
Given the fact that Arsenal cannot defend to save their lives, do you think that they can win this competition?
I mean, I think, and we've discussed this before, on their day, Arsenal can beat any team in the world. And I think it's a question that, like, there's a difference between, like, will they and can they? I think they can, but will they? I'm honestly not too sure. I mean, we lost to Newcastle over the weekend, which was not encouraging. Shout
out DeAndre Yedlin.
DeAndre Yedlin, yeah, American repping in the Premier League. He is a stylish man. Side note, he's a very stylish dude.
He's a very stylish guy.
He's got his cool hair, and he's just a stylish guy. Glad he's repping. Anyways, getting back to this. So losing 2 to Newcastle, even though Lacazette scored, not encouraging. Not a very encouraging result at all. And
Mustafi, man.
Oh, gosh, man, Mustafi. I was watching Arsenal Fan TV before the show, and Troops. My main man Troops, your Twitter buddy Troops.
Yeah.
He tweeted at Nate last week, so basically him and Troops are tight now. Mustafi, he's so suspect, and they were on Arsenal Fan TV. They brought up the fact that Arsenal at the beginning of the season were actually shopping him after one season of being at Arsenal. So maybe Arsenal themselves even acknowledge, hey, this guy is not who we thought we were getting, and he had a tentative deal to Inter Milan actually set up, but the deal fell through on deadline day. So we've actually kept him. And the reasons as to why he is starting, I think the only reason I can think of is there's probably some clause in his contract that says he needs to start X number of games because his defending has been atrocious. That guy needs to buy new cleats because he is slipping like all over the place, like physically, like he'll just eat the dirt like out of nowhere. And it's so amazing that he was on the Germany World Cup winning squad, and the German national team believed he had the quality to be on that team that won the World Cup, and he just has completely fell off a cliff. And I think it's partly to do with him just not having confidence, but like Arsenal coaching is just atrocious on the managerial level all the way down. It's a systemic problem. So it doesn't surprise me that he has deteriorated in that way. I can go on forever about Mustafi. I get it. And these defensive issues are definitely something that we need to shore up. I mean, I think if we have any chance of beating Atletico Madrid, we're going to have to sit Mustafi, which is something that Arsene Wenger doesn't want to do. Rob Holding, over the weekend against Newcastle, he was probably our best defender in the back. And so give Rob Holding a start. Give the guy with the hot hand, if you will, the start on the day. And against Newcastle, we didn't start Ramsey. We didn't start Welbeck. Arguably, 2 out of our probably 4 really hot players right now, if you look at Aubameyang and Lacazette, or the other 2. And Aubameyang can't play in the Europa League. So, I think the key in order to get through this draw with Atletico Madrid is Aaron Ramsey and Welbeck are going to continue to start. And, with Arsene Wenger, you never know. But these 2 guys are like my X factor. Like, if these guys are able to get a goal apiece in the draw itself over 2 legs, I think we have a legitimate shot of winning this draw. And El Neni holding it down in the back. He actually had an okay game against Newcastle. I'd like to just see a little bit more support in that way. But, man, oh man, like when I saw that we drew Atletico Madrid, I'll be honest with you, like, that's I didn't have a lot of confidence. I was really hoping we drew RB Salzburg, and we've kind of gotten lucky in that way in the Europa League thus far, drawing CSKA Moscow, drawing Ostersunds, that Swedish side. So yeah, man, hopefully I answered your question, but
yeah.
I believe that if we're able to, I think on their day, just play the right defensive players, and Aaron Ramsey and Welbeck are just going to have to carry the team.
You talk about Arsenal on their day, Arsenal at their best. How many times this year have we seen Arsenal at their best? Because I can think of 2 times. I can think of that home match versus Spurs in November, and I can think of the first leg against Milan. But besides that, I cannot remember any other time where Arsenal at their best against a team that was as good or a little bit better than them. Like I just cannot think of Arsenal when they're at their best. So yeah, I mean, Arsenal at their best can go toe to toe with anybody, but they're never at their best.
I mean, I think to push back on that, I think those 2 matches were the 2 most important matches of the season, which is like I don't think that's a coincidence. Like, your home match against Spurs is definitely arguably the most important match of your domestic league, like unequivocally. And that's not to take anything away from, obviously they should have, put in results against, like, when they weren't getting results against teams like Bournemouth and Watford and those teams. But I think for whatever reason, and I think it comes down to tactics and players just feeling more up to it against these big sides. That's why, I don't think anyone really gave Arsenal that much of a shot against AC Milan, especially AC Milan had come in with 8 straight wins. Then Arsenal put in a great performance at the San Siro. So essentially what I'm saying is we never know with Arsenal. They're such a mixed bag, and at their best they're so good, and at their worst they're literally like a League 2 side. So we're just, I'm just as a fan hoping for the best, and but definitely not. I'm not very encouraged that we drew Atletico.
Yeah. I mean, just I got Atletico coasting through. I don't think it's going to be close.
Yeah,
that's just my prediction.
So moving on before I probably jump on your side of the bandwagon with that. As we mentioned before, there were some crazy games in the Europa League, and I think we want to start with Marseille. They came back and beat RB Leipzig, who's a quality Bundesliga side, after being down in the first leg, by a modest score of 1-0. That second leg, definitely a lot different than the first. The second leg score was 5-2. Hiroki Sakai scoring from the halfway mark to secure that victory for Marseille. And I was watching that game live on my laptop in one of the restaurants we have on campus here at USD, and I was just blown away by the atmosphere. I was blown away by Dimitri Payet, who should have had 2 goals, but had 1 for sure goal. But the second goal, he had probably a 30-yard top corner just banger of a goal that was disallowed because one of his teammates fouled a guy. And so Dimitri Payet, him playing at his best, we got a taste of him in the Premier League for West Ham. He carried that entire West Ham team that whole year. He's just a quality player that I think can put a team on his back and just completely go into the next round. And yeah, so Marseille going into the next round, they're a really scary team. If as an Arsenal fan, I would be maybe arguably equally as scared to play a team like Marseille as Atletico Madrid, because Marseille probably had a lot more of a convincing win than Atletico honestly did. Atletico didn't look that strong against Sporting Lisbon. They really didn't. They just squeezed by. I think the second leg score was just a 0-0 draw.
1-0.
It was a 1-0 for Sporting. So they lost that second leg, and it was that leg reminded me of the Bayern Munich leg in the Champions League. Just kind of a team that you would expect to go through. Like, it was a little harder than you would initially think. And albeit that may have been a testament to just the way in which Atletico play. They're able to lock down on defense like no other team in the league, and Griezmann is able to kind of go up and get 1 or 2 goals, and that's kind of how they win games. So, albeit that's probably their strategy going in, is just to kind of lock it down and use Jose Mourinho's tactics, except more effectively. And just so Atletico Madrid are going through, Marseille are going through, and then finally, Austrian side, RB Salzburg came from behind and beat Lazio with a final aggregate score of 6-5. RB Salzburg, definitely not a team that you would think to beat a team like Lazio, who has a player by the name of Ciro Immobile, who's probably the most underrated player and unacknowledged player in the world. What he's doing so far, he has 39 goals in all competitions. Mo Salah has 40. Ciro Immobile has 39. So, all testament to Ciro Immobile in the way that he's carried Lazio. It looks like Lazio and Serie A are going to qualify for Champions League next year, just outright, because of the ways in which he has just really performed. Is Ciro Immobile a former Dortmund player? Did he go to Dortmund for a little bit?
I believe so for a little while.
Yeah, so I think he went to Dortmund. It didn't really work out, and then he went back to Italy with a team like Lazio, who you don't necessarily think of Lazio as having the top drawer, top players in the world, but Ciro Immobile this season has just...
Some guys are like that. It doesn't work out at a big club, and they just go to a smaller club, and that's just where they fit in better, So
yeah.
Some guys are like that.
And Immobile actually scored in this draw for in this second leg for Lazio, but Salzburg scored 3 goals in 6 minutes to come all the way back against Lazio, and then propelling them into the semifinals of the Europa League. And so who says the Europa League isn't entertaining? It is quite literally the NIT of
but it's exciting.
European soccer, but that doesn't, I don't think, take away from the quality performances that we saw in guys like Dimitri Payet, in guys like Hiroki Sakai, for Marseille, held it down from the back on defense and scored a goal on top of it. So some of the performances we were seeing were really great, and I think what makes soccer for me such an enjoyable sport to watch is the fans, just how much it really means. The passion is just, we don't see that in American sports. And the Stade Velodrome, after that final goal for Marseille, that's where the European Championships, the final was played in France. I believe it was 2016, the French Federation of Football had that game in the Stade Velodrome in Marseille over the big stadium in Paris, whose name escapes me.
Parc des Princes or something like that.
Yeah, Parc des Princes.
I don't speak French.
Nope,
even
but you're going to Paris
this summer.
Yeah, you're going to France. You better learn. So I think just the atmosphere, and for teams like Arsenal, who may not create a comparable team atmosphere at their home games, going to these away legs is going to be really tough for them. And I think, long story short, it was a really entertaining Europa League week. I hope Arsenal go through that semifinal leg of the draw. I believe that you have Atletico going through
by a lot.
And Nate, given all the craziness, let's take a look at. So we have RB Salzburg versus Marseille in the other end of the Europa League draw. One of those teams is going to be in the final of the Europa League, and the winner of that, obviously, as you mentioned, going to the Champions League. Who do you give an edge to in Marseille versus RB Salzburg? I
have Marseille, and RB Salzburg. This run by them has been great, pretty amazing. We talk about Roma and Liverpool's Cinderella stories. Well, RB Salzburg has been the Cinderella story of the Europa League, but eventually that clock has to strike midnight, and the slipper will not fit. So I got Marseille going through.
Yeah, I think I also have Marseille, and as I mentioned, the Stade Velodrome is just too intimidating of an atmosphere to really get anything out of it. So, I think that that kind of wraps up Europa League. Premier League weekend. It was that happened. With all the European international matches that went on, it was kind of easy to forget that Manchester City, in fact, clinched the Premier League. Nate, Manchester City, we've had their doubts about them in recent weeks due to, I think they lost 3 consecutive games, but, they ended up winning the Premier League title. So, on the whole, how would you rate Manchester City's season?
I would give them an A. That's how I would rate their season. And I think, we can talk all we want about the money and all this stuff about Pep Guardiola, but I think Pep is as good a manager as there is in the world right now. And, yeah, you can spend all this money on players, but you have got to put players in a position to succeed. And the other team in Manchester United, has not done that versus Pep Guardiola has in the way that he's developed players in training. And I think that this is one of the best Premier League teams of all time, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely one of the best, not the best. I think especially since they went out in the Champions League, lost against Man United when they had the chance to clinch against their bitter rivals in that way. But that isn't to take anything away from what they've done this season, especially since they finished 4th in the Premier League last season. Going from 4th to
3rd, I think.
Third,
yeah.
Third. Yeah, Liverpool was 4th. Excuse me. And
but last year people were writing all these hot takes about Pep, calling him Fraudiola, that he couldn't do it in the Premier League. And
Fraudiola.
Yeah, I think he proved that he can do it in the Premier League.
Yeah, and who knows? It could be even more of an upward trajectory after this season. I'm sure they're going to fill some holes, maybe defensively, maybe they just like to throw money at players. So I'm sure we'll see another big money signing. I've heard like Marco Asensio rumors to them for a long time, so maybe we'll see him go there. But I think on the other side of the coin, when you talk about Man City, you got to talk about Man United, the other team in Manchester. And over the weekend, they went from 2 weekends ago beating Manchester City, unequivocally the best team in the Premier League, I mean, at least domestically. And then they lost to West Brom, who is dead last, 20th in the Premier League, for sure getting relegated. Like, they're, I think, 6 or 7 points behind whoever's in 19th place.
Yeah,
they're deep in relegation mode. And
just for a little context, for people who don't know how big of a deal this is the equivalent of going on the road and beating the Patriots and then losing at home to the Browns the next week. That's literally the Premier League equivalent of that.
Yeah. So really, really amazing that Manchester United kind of went from an all-time high to an all-time low. Nate, Manchester United, I think that might sum up their season. They were an inconsistent side this season, even though it looks like they're going to be finishing 2nd this year. So I posed the question, how would you rate Manchester City's season? I'll pose that same question to you now about Manchester United. How do you rate their season in the context of just all the ups and downs that they've had?
Given the expectations going into this season, I'll give them a B-. And I think that their season has been disappointing. I have not been impressed with them since August. When they were in August, they were rolling through teams, and then kind of, August, September, they started to struggle a little bit. They lost to Huddersfield, and then from that point on, they've been very pragmatic. And yeah, I just have not been impressed with them, despite having very high quality players.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you. I have not been impressed. This might be I feel like both of us just hate United. I think that's like the one of the few things come together.
For me, I actually like some of the players on United.
Yeah.
Some of the players on United are some of my favorite players, but it's not the players, it's the way that they play.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating.
Just it's one of the most bland, boring games to watch.
Yes.
Like things I would rather do, I would probably watch Bayern versus Sevilla over a Manchester United game. It was really just that kind of cringeworthy, and it was really a theme all year, and so I wasn't impressed. I think especially in the context of Jose Mourinho's like whack comments that he made, that we actually talked about on this show a few weeks ago. He threw like everyone on his team under the bus, instead of like De Gea, and that was kind of it. Like
football heritage.
Yeah, he was talking about heritage and how a team like United has no heritage, which clearly they have so much history, and so I don't know what the heck he's talking about. So I agree with you. Like, it was not, even though they finished in 2nd place, Manchester City tied the record for clinching the Premier League title the soonest, meaning that that's a testament to all the other teams in the Premier League, especially those who finished right behind Manchester City and not even making it competitive for them within the domestic league. And so Manchester United, they really should have put the pressure on City going into the final weeks of the season, and that's probably where they should have been. So, like, let's say they finished 3 or 4 points behind City when it was all said and done at the end of the year, then I would probably give them an A for the season. Like, if they were able to put the pressure on City more, but they just, they beat City when they had, in that really crucial game, and that was kind of arguably the biggest takeaway for the entire season was them preventing City from clinching the title a week early.
Yes.
That's essentially,
and then handing it to them the next week.
And then handing it to them the next week by losing to West Brom is all Manchester United really have to say about this season, which in my estimation deserves a B-, if not lower, most definitely.
All right, so when we come back, that wraps up for soccer segment. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about the NBA playoffs and just kind of giving our takes and kind of taking an overview of the NBA playoffs. So, all that and more when we get back. Like what you're hearing? Well, I've got news for you. You no longer have to wait a whole week to hear from your favorite sports personalities. Hi, I'm Nate Wiggins, and Ben Friedel and I have got you covered. Give our show, The Unathletic, a sports podcast, a listen. We release new episodes every Monday and are committed to bringing you the best content. That's right, the very best content.
Welcome back to the Unathletic, everyone. When we were last with you, we were kind of finishing off a solid hour's worth of soccer coverage. You know, there was a lot to talk about, and I think we would have been remiss if we didn't address all of it. But now, also, the NBA playoffs just got underway, and I think that's really, really exciting for both of us. We're both pretty avid basketball fans, to say the least. And so, Nate, I want to know from you, like, kind of going into this playoff, since we've only really seen one or two games so far from each series, what are kind of the storylines or teams that you're watching kind of going into this NBA playoffs?
Well, I really think that this is Houston's year, and James Harden is the MVP in my opinion. And I don't think anyone in the West can stop them when they're firing on all cylinders. I know that Sunday night, they had a little bit of trouble with the Timberwolves, but I think that Houston at their best is better than anyone else in the NBA. That's kind of the biggest thing that I'm looking forward to going into these playoffs. And people talk about the Warriors. I do not believe in the Warriors this year, and I think that because of the Steph Curry injury, even if he comes back, we saw in 2016 what happens when Steph Curry is not at 100%. Mm-hmm. The Warriors were not able to get the job done despite having a 73-win team. So because of that, and then other potential injuries with the Warriors, we don't know what's going to happen with that. I think that Houston is the safest bet going into these playoffs.
Yeah, I definitely think they're the most safe. I mean, I'm a Cavs fan, so I can't even believe I'm about to stick up for the Warriors, but I think it's still the Warriors' conference to lose. Even with Steph not at his best, I think the reason we've seen him out so long is he wants to make sure that he comes when he's back, he is 100%. And
that was a problem a couple years ago, is that he came back too soon.
Yeah,
and because of that, was not able to defend Kyrie Irving, and we saw how that ended up for the Warriors. But I just think that given his history of ankle injuries, I think that even if he does come back, he will not be as effective as he is when he's healthy. Last year, we saw how good he is when he's healthy. 2015, we saw how good he is when he's healthy. 2016, when he was not healthy, he was not as effective.
What was amazing, though, is they really just took it to the Spurs. Like they crushed the Spurs. And the Spurs are never a team to overlook, especially with Greg Popovich just being a tactical genius in that way. And I think that's just a testament to the players that have stepped up since Steph has been absent. Guys like Quinn Cook are like having games like the games of their lives. JaVale McGee, like all these like outcasted players.
Nick Young.
See, yeah, Swaggy P. Yeah. Did we ever think Swaggy P would be an instrumental?
The fact that Swaggy P is like playing in playoff games in 2018, just remember earlier I was talking about Mo Salah never giving up on your dreams. Same thing, Swaggy P.
And Taj Gibson, right?
Taj Gibson, Derrick Rose, yeah. Those guys are playing in playoff games in 2018. Anything is possible, boys and girls.
Yeah, so you never know. And I think that as much as I just really don't like Warriors and don't like Warriors fans, if you're listening,
fans are so annoying.
The Warriors fans, you are literally the worst. I'm calling you out. You are terrible. Anyways, just you can't write them off though. Like they're just such a good side, I guess, to use football
Steve
terminology.
Kerr is a tremendous head coach.
Yeah, and so I don't think I'm willing to write them off yet, especially since it's a Houston team that's relatively unproven in the playoffs. And even though they were just flat out dominant over the regular season, as we know, the playoffs are a whole different animal. And I definitely think my prediction that it's going to be a Warriors-Rockets conference finals, and I think that series will go deep.
That'll be a fun series.
That is going to be a really fun series. I think one of the more entertaining series in the West probably since OKC versus Golden State a few years back when OKC had KD and that went to Game 7. I think this is going to be one of the more entertaining series we've seen in a few years because the West has been all Warriors. But I think, give the edge to the Warriors because I think Steph will be back at that point. I think he's waiting to come back for that reason of being for sure 100% at that point. But yeah, I mean, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. And I think in the East, some other storylines are really prevalent, especially with kind of another unproven 1 seed in the Raptors. And Nate, kind of what are your thoughts on the Raptors, and do you think that they have a similar shot as the Rockets do to get to the finals?
Yeah, I don't believe in the Raptors, like, at all. and yeah, they won. They set a franchise record in terms of wins, and they are the number 1 seed. But they have a history of when the playoffs come around, they turn into Barney, to use a dinosaur reference.
It's a dinosaur reference. Oh my god.
Oh man. This show has gone off the
rails. We'll cut that out.
But yeah, they just have a history of choking, and they're facing the Wizards in the first round, and I would not be surprised if the Wizards pull off that 8-1 upset because I just do not believe in the Raptors at all.
Yeah, and I think that 8-1 upset is a testament to just how wide open the East is as
Absolutely.
a whole.
Talk about the teams like the 76ers,
being a 4 seed.
Yeah.
No, Cleveland's the 4 seed, right?
Yeah, 76ers are the 3 seed.
Yeah, so we're seeing, especially with the seeding and how everything just played out over the regular season, we have teams that are seeded a lot lower than they probably should be. We have teams like probably the Celtics who are seeded a lot higher than they should be, especially with the injury to like Kyrie and so on and so forth. But, I mean, I think the Raptors will get past the Wizards. I don't think the Wizards have enough firepower, especially the Raptors got over that Game 1 bugaboo.
They did, the Game 1 hoodoo.
Yeah, and I don't think they had ever won a Game 1 in their, like, franchise history or something. And that was the very first Game 1 they had ever won. And so getting that monkey off their back, I think it's going to be really important looking forward, though, because I think Game 1 has been on their mind so much. Maybe they can't get complacent. Like, there's a Game 2 and a Game 3, and that's what's so brutal about the NBA playoffs. It's best 4 out of 7 every freaking series, which I think should be changed. I think that's kind of brutal to play that many games in a playoff series, but I think that's a different discussion for a different day. And, I mean, in the meantime, I know you're a huge fan of the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah, I am, and I think that you look at their talent, and, they've trusted the process. They're finally reaping the results of the process. And, right now, if Joel Embiid could come back healthy, I think that's a team that can go to the conference finals. If they get matched up with either Boston or Milwaukee in the second round, I will take the 76ers in either one of those series. I understand, Boston has played well despite all their injuries. And, when you've got the Greek freak in Milwaukee, you can never count them out. But I think the 76ers, are the second best team in the East, honestly. And we talk about how wide open the East is. Like, if the 76ers end up going to the NBA Finals, I will not be surprised because of how wide open the East is.
Yeah, so you mentioned the 76ers are the second best team in the East. Who is the best team in the East?
The best team in the East? Oh, my gosh. You know what? I cannot go against LeBron. I'm sorry. And I understand that they're the 4 seed, but playoff LeBron is a different beast.
Yeah,
he is a different
0 dark
beast.
30.
Exactly. He's a different beast. And I understand that, I'm taking into context not just what happened during the regular season, but I'm kind of looking at it from, look, when the playoffs come around, who do I trust the most? And I trust LeBron more than I trust anybody else in the Eastern Conference in the playoffs. That dude, in the past, has willed teams to the NBA Finals. And I don't know if he can do it again this year, but I would not bet against playoff LeBron.
What's amazing is if we were making the comparison of LeBron James to Cristiano Ronaldo and Real Madrid earlier in the show, Real Madrid are 4th place in La Liga right now.
And Ronaldo has willed them to the Champions League semifinals.
And LeBron, 4 seed in the East, very, very convincing, or very coincidental, I should say. And, and I don't think it's fair to take anything away from Ronaldo and doubting him, as it is the same to doubt LeBron James in the context of the NBA playoffs. I think come finals time, it's definitely going to be a challenge for me personally, for any team coming out of the East to face the Warriors, much less the Rockets, or even a team like the OKC, in the finals. Like, that would be a really difficult matchup. And I think that's just a testament to what we saw this past offseason and everyone moving west and just...
It's an arms race now out west. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And so... But I think I'm more excited for this NBA playoffs than I've been excited for other playoffs over the past 3 years. Just because... I feel like the competitive balance has gotten at least a little bit better. Even if the Warriors still win the finals, I think that the rest of the NBA has caught up to an extent. And
at least other teams in the West have.
Yeah, and it's been kind of discouraging I've sort of gravitated away from basketball over the past few years, even though my favorite team, the Cavs, have been making the finals. It's just because I was just thinking I already know who's going to be in the finals every single year. But this year, I think they're changing that script, and it's exciting. It really is. So Nate, kind of wrapping up this discussion on basketball, are there any other teams that you kind of have your eye on in terms of who could make a run? You mentioned the Rockets. Is it another team in the West?
I think maybe the Oklahoma City Thunder. They've had their struggles this year, but I mean, Paul George in Game 1 just looked absolutely tremendous. And so, the Thunder, I think that they have the talent to go on a run, and maybe I think they can make it to the conference finals. I do not see them beating the Rockets or beating the Warriors in the conference finals, but I think that they can make a run to at least the Western Conference Finals in Paul George's 1 year in Oklahoma City before he hops on that plane and flies out west.
Oh, man.
But yeah, I think Oklahoma City can make a run, yeah.
Yeah, so exciting NBA playoff basketball time where we'll have more updates. That's for sure.
And we will hopefully soon we'll have a guest on to talk about the NBA playoffs.
Yeah. Oh, is he? Who is this guest? And first of all, why is he willing to talk about the NBA playoffs?
Well, okay, I was going to keep it a secret, but if you want to go ahead and spill the beans as to who this guest is actually a professor of mine, Professor Christopher Carter, who is a theology professor here at University of San Diego, and he is like one of the smartest people I have ever met in my entire life. And I was actually talking to him about the show, and he said, I was like, oh yeah, we're starting to have guests on hopefully soon. And he was like, oh, well, if you're looking for guests, like I would love to come on at the end of May and talk about the NBA playoffs. And so yeah, he will be someone that we have on, and he is a very knowledgeable human being. So he is definitely going to be someone I cannot wait to have on.
You're always working hard for the show, Nate.
Exactly.
You're always putting in a good word for the show, which I appreciate. You're just building the brand.
Exactly.
There you go. Trust the process, right?
Exactly.
Definitely. One day we'll have more than 70 likes on Facebook. One day.
One
One day.
day.
Anyways, we're actually going to take a short final break, and when we come back, we're going to let you know who or what team or what entire organization will ride the bus this week. And also, we give you our final thoughts. So stay tuned, everyone. We will be right back.
There's gold at stake for Golden State. How much weight can King's shoulders take? When the odds ain't great, some fold and break, while greats let the dreams of a ring motivate. Boys become men when postseasons begin. These lights shine brighter, baby, sink or you swim. To those who got hit by the skin of their teeth, the formula's the same now, win and repeat.
Welcome back to the Unathletic. When we were last with you, we were actually talking about some NBA. NBA playoff season is here, and we're both excited about it, so go check out that segment if you want to listen to that. In the meantime, Nate, you're pretty fired up about this. So this week's, who is riding the bus? Just take it away, Nate.
Well, riding the bus this week is it's actually two organizations. It is Major League Baseball and New Era Cap. And the reason for that is, yesterday, Sunday, was Jackie Robinson Day in Major League Baseball, so players wore the 42 jerseys and the caps that had the little 42 on the side. But one particular cap that was being sold was a Cleveland Indians cap with the 42 on the side, but also had Chief Wahoo on the front. And if you ask me, I think that's a little hypocritical to be promoting a player who was integral in terms of getting racism out of Major League Baseball, integrating the sport, but then also selling a hat that is frankly a racist hat. I think that what you're saying to me is that it's more about the commercialization or more about selling products and actual what Jackie Robinson's legacy was to the game of Major League Baseball. And so when I saw that on Twitter, I was just like, well, that's weird. That's extremely hypocritical. And since I think the hat got pulled off the the Major League Baseball store. And so, credit to Major League Baseball for that. But I mean, come on.
And credit to the Cleveland Indians, actually.
Yeah,
I think they've realized their wrongdoings of the past and are slowly taking steps in order to make this right. So I think it had to be partially their move to take it off the shelf.
Yeah, definitely. And so, but still, I think that should have never even been on the shelf in the first place. So Major League Baseball and New Era Cap, ride the bus.
Given that Jackie Robinson Day, I think it's a really cool thing that we do, and it's definitely important that we acknowledge on, we should be acknowledging him more than just a yearly basis, but that we make the space that everyone wears 42 and remembers Jackie Robinson and honors his legacy in that way. But I think one of the things that I actually saw over the weekend watching the Padre game was the Padres at their game showed kind of a Jackie Robinson tribute video on their overhead board, and I was watching the game on TV, and straight from the video, once the video ended, like Jackie Robinson in memoriam, like however many years he lived, they panned straight to the Mississippi state flag, which happens to have a Confederate logo on it, and it was I don't know, it was not very well placed, and so I think it's just a testament to, like, even though Jackie Robinson was such a great American and great advocate for the rights of marginalized people in this country, that there's still so much work to do. And I don't know, those were, I think, just a couple of symbols over the weekend that just really showed me that there still is so much work to do.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, it's not a secret, my feelings on racism. And I think that's a whole socio-political
discussion for another time. Yes.
So yeah, now we're going to go into our final thoughts.
Yes.
Ben, is there anything that you're going to be looking forward to this week?
I think, honestly, I'll be watching the same thing that you'll be watching, if I'm being totally honest. So I think we'll have a joint final thought. So Nate, enlighten our listeners as to what both of us will be watching.
Well, I hope this is the same thing. I'm going to be watching... Well, I got two things I'm looking forward to. First off, I'm looking forward to this upcoming Red Sox-Angels series.
That is what I would be watching. Yeah.
I'm very excited for that. Got two of the best teams in baseball facing off. I'm excited for this David Price, Shohei Ohtani pitching matchup on Tuesday. And, we'll see. It'll be nice to expose the Angels as the frauds they are.
Oh, my God.
But also, another thing that I'm looking forward to on a more personal note, one of my best friends is actually coming back from abroad, Cole Ristoff, and he actually started listening to the show while he's abroad, and he told me
we have a listener. What?
Yeah, he told me that he's a big fan of the show. He loves what we're doing, and so I'm actually just really excited to see him. We're gonna be playing golf on Sunday, so yeah. And also, I just want to give a shout out to all the listeners. You guys are
except
amazing.
the Warriors fans.
Yeah, I'm gonna give a shout out to all the listeners. We love you guys so much. We thank you for your support. So yeah.
But on the real, Warriors fans, like, you really need to rethink, like, your loyalties and everything. I'm playing. Okay. Or am I? Right, or am I?
We are.
Let's end
it
here.
Wrap it up right now. Goodbye, everyone.
Have a great week, everyone.
Oh my God. Oh man.
There you go.
What an ending.
You see this? Yep.
What an ending.
Yep. We're keeping all this.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Cool.
Great.
My man.
Woo!
Check us out on Twitter and on iTunes, YouTube, Facebook, and SoundCloud. Also, check out our sports blog. Articles are released every week, and our writers need your support. In the meantime, we'll be back next week.